Hello and welcome to Satish Jha show. We heard this week that government of India invited the Singaporean ambassador to talk to him about how the government was not very pleased with the statement made by the Singaporean Prime Minister in her parliament. What he said was interesting. He said that he has observed decaying of Indian political standards over a period of time, and roughly half or more of Indian legislatures and parliamentarians are in fact subject to some legal challenges on account of some criminal activities. And as if to just rub salt to the wounds, Prime Minister also referred to the ability or able leadership of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, and he talked about how many leaders who actually got their nations free in the beginning were not able to perform as well as Pandit Nehru. So in some ways, praising Nehru and talking about the decaying standards rattled our own government, and we invited summoned the High Commissioner of Singapore to the Foreign Office. Now, in a way, it's a very interesting story. I wish, or most of us wish, such things don't happen, because first, we need to be a nation larger than being, so thin-skinned about what somebody says. Second, there has to be a nicer way to say these things instead of summoning of High Commissioner. Third, if you follow the same practice, how far we can go in terms of dealing with the world. If the world has an opinion, are we going to deal with the world all the time by protesting, or rather doing things in a way that the world doesn't find offensive? So Singapore is not just another country. Singapore is a country where a large number of population, at least more than 10% people there living there, they are Indians. There are about 6 lakh Indians in a population of roughly 60 lakhs. And that makes them a very interesting demographic group. But more importantly, they're also some of the affluent members of the Singaporean demographics, nation as such. Compared to them, the local population is slightly less affluent. They're poorer. But don't forget that Singapore remains one of the world's richest nations per capita. It's about 62,000. I think it's the second or third in the world in per capita income. I'm saying second or third because the rankings keep changing from time to time. More than that, India's economy is like saying there are 5 Singapore cities in India, and that's like whole of India. In other words, India's economy is about 5 times the size of Singapore city, of 60 lakh people, even though 1,400 million or 140 crore people live in the country. So if you see from the ease of business, Singapore is among the top 2. And we talk about how we've improved, we still remain around 100 in the world at ease of doing business. So Singapore is a country we have a lot to learn from. And it wasn't like this all the time. It has, in the past 50 years, since Lee Kuan Yew became the prime minister and founded it, and the way he managed is a subject of many textbooks and is taught all over the world how he managed. Some people don't like what he did, but most people accept the fact that he managed Singapore like a corporation, and it's been a most successful story. It's a city-state that Dubai is trying to follow. Some people even joke about Singapore being the best Indian city there is. Now, we may have our preferences, but the fact is Singapore is a great example of excellence in whatever it does. India is just the opposite of that because it hasn't shown its interest in excellence. It has shown its interest in claiming excellence. We are the Vishwagurus. We are the biggest pharma this. We are the biggest healthcare that. We are biggest the teachers community that. In other words, we like to claim while Singapore likes to do. Now, is it a bad thing for another country to think in terms of how another country's internal environment, sociology, demographics, polity, or economics works? I think without that conversation, we don't become any better. Having said that, of course, we know that some people are thick-skinned, some people are thin-skinned. The greater nations, larger nations, they know how to handle these things better. Just imagine the amount of attack America gets every day from all sides. But countries, when they operate, a leader speaking to his parliament and discussing is one thing. If someone making a statement which has to be heard by India is a totally different matter. So how do we take it? Many people will think our response was, did not live up to the fact that we want to be Vishwagurus or we think we are a great society. Great society will respond with somehow, you can say, more elegance, more diplomatically, something which will be not offensive, something which will engage the other people more with us. And those who are not really at that level of confidence, self-confidence, and an achievement and accomplishment probably will rattle very quickly. Now, if you see from one point of view, Singapore has been engaging India. There are good reasons for Singapore's frustration with India. In particular, we can think of ASEAN and Singapore because of relationship between our Prime Minister Rao, Narasimha Rao, and whoso was Prime Minister in Singapore. I think it was Go. So Rao Go or Go Rao. And they came together, which led to a better relationship, which they tried to engage India where they could engage. But India doesn't like to engage with small countries, small nations. It just likes big stuff. So India likes to talk to Japan, likes to talk to Australia, America. You see our Prime Minister loves to hug everybody. You also heard Dr. Manmohan Singh saying, by hugging, you don't become popular, you don't become a better friend of any nation or their leader. Anyway, so what we have done is we have, for no reason, we've responded to Singapore, which was not quite keeping in with the status that we want to accord ourselves. That's one point. On the second point, another country, Kuwait, which is part of larger West Asia. And because of hijab issue, in that being almost banned, and despite the fact that High Court order said something different, people are interpreting it differently, and even allowing teachers not to enter with hijab. The basic idea was that if somebody doesn't enter with hijab, then somebody shouldn't enter with sindoor or shouldn't enter with any other religious symbol. But the Muslims were singled out. And the singling out, that bigotry is basically being talked about around the world. This is a matter of conversation in America, in Europe, in West Asia, and India is getting a bad name. We can say we are the greatest, but the world has begun to doubt that. So that is something we should be really quite concerned about and worried about. Do we want to create an impression that we are bigoted, that we believe in one religion being more superior to others? Why don't we stick to our constitution? Are we keeping in pace or step with the world, the way it's evolving towards liberalism, towards respecting human beings, every community, every nation, every color, every creed, every size, whatever. Any differences are not, if you're human, regardless of all the differences. And you get the same respect, whether my weight is 500 pounds or 50, whether I'm 8 feet tall or 2, whether I'm white or black, whether I'm brown, whether I'm yellow, doesn't make a difference. And whether I'm Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Sikh, any religion, Buddhist, Jain, anything, that shouldn't make a difference to the way I get respected as a human being. Now if that is the basic philosophy and which we work on, then we will be a different nation. But if we start saying our history tells us this, our history tells us that, and we are going to divide the nation based on our perception of history, because history, no matter what you do, we were not there to watch it. And it must have changed, I don't know how many times. Of course, there is historiography. Of course, there are historians. Of course, there are multiple viewpoints. Those viewpoints are very good in academic environment. Those viewpoints are very good in being talked about in terms of trying to refine our understanding. But they're not very good when common man, who probably is not ready to understand and how to connect those dots, begins to mouth them because the leaders begin to talk a certain language, which is going to tear us apart rather than unite us. Great leaders unite us. Poor leaders, insecure leaders, those leaders who are in love with themselves and nothing else, they divide us. It's very simple. Gautam Buddha united. So his philosophy has, spread across regions and millions of people outside of India. You looked at Gandhi is a great leader of the world. Every president, American president, at least on the Democratic side, comes and praises Gandhi as their inspiration. Gandhi, if you look at entire Africa, Africa, reveres Gandhi because Gandhi created the momentum for the world to recognize the racism, recognize the apartheid, recognize the challenges they were facing just because of color. And not just that, of course, colonialism was there too. So colonialism and the color were the two major issues. Today, don't forget that Africa is a nation, is a continent of 54 nations. Its total GDP is as much as India's. Population is also as much as India's. So as a continent, Africa, entire Africa, is about as big as India, both in population and income. It's not poorer, but its possibilities because of its natural resources are phenomenal. So maybe next 100 years, things will change in such a way that it will be Africa's time as well. But we don't have to divide the world by whose time has come. If you look at this way, that we will not divide the world on any of the artificial boundaries that our evolution has created, and instead think in terms of respecting every single human being, regardless of any differences. That will be a different society. And right now we are fighting about what? Clothes. Now, the question is, how do you see hijab? And we have had some discussion on that. But the fact is that I know the Hindutva friends of mine, they think it's a good thing being done in Karnataka. There are other people who are more liberal. They think it's a bad thing being done. If you take hijab as clothes, then you see differently. Take hijab as a religious symbol, take it differently. But regardless of whether it's religious symbol or cloth, you cannot be banning it. You cannot be deciding for somebody else. Even if you have a uniform should be announced well in advance. And then that should happen before the admission. There is a rule for everything. There is a way to engage everyone. There is a way to respect our students and teachers. Yesterday, a lecturer, a Muslim lecturer resigned because she was being asked by the police to take off her hijab. She was not going to a classroom. I think there is somehow the order of the High Court of Karnataka has been, in my opinion, a very sad order. It has not clarified anything, created more confusion, and the people who are implementing at the ground, who have very poor understanding of anything, let alone law, they are going to implement it. They will implement it badly. They'll create further discord. They'll create further challenges. Point is, how are we governing our nation internally and externally? We just saw in 1 week, externally we looked very poor on both Singapore and Kuwait account. Internally, we've created discord. We look very, very poor. So what is this governance from something where, the 10 years of previous UPA, from 2004 to 2014, we had different issues, but not this sort, issues of trying to move forward, have to go ahead. And now we have issues of what can tear us apart, what can make us look less than what we want to look like. That's where we are at this point in time. That said, I look forward to engaging with you in your questions, just in case, because I get informed by the questions you have. So I look forward to your questions. Also, I would like you to follow me on Twitter, which is my first name _ last name, SATRSH_JHA. And your observations, your comments, your questions, they inform us. And this should be a healthy debate without anybody feeling being abused, anybody feeling being questioned at a level which makes them uncomfortable. Let's make it a conversation which helps us find a better place in terms of who we are, who we should be. Thank you very much, and look forward to the next episode of Satish Jha Show. Thank you.